The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. My name is Mateen. I am a product manager for ActiveReports. Thank you for joining me for this webinar. In this webinar, I hope to go over some UI and UX and reporting fundamentals. We're going to start working on a Angular project. I already have an Angular project. Don't really like the look and feel of it, so we're going to go ahead and modify it, enhance its UI and enhance its UX a little bit to make it look better, more functional. And in the process, we're going to be using ActiveReports and ActiveReport Server to create some reports, create some a dashboard type of a report for a sales team, or about a sales team rather. So that's the plan. Now, before I go ahead and get started, I just wanted to mention a few things about the GoToWebinar interface that you have and about just general housekeeping. So if you have any questions, if you have any problems or anything like that throughout this webinar, please let me know. There is a questions pane within this interface, the GoToWebinar interface, that you can send me your questions. So feel free to type any questions throughout that come to your mind throughout the webinar. And if I can get to them during the webinar, I will do so, and I will address those questions. If not, then at the end of the session, we should have some time to go over those questions as well. So that's basically it. So let's go ahead and get started. Today, again, like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about UX, we're going to be talking about UI, and we're going to be talking about what are the elements that make a good UI and a good UX. And then we're going to talk about some design and reporting fundamentals. And like I said, we're going to do some demonstrations. So we're going to work on that, enhancing that Angular application. And then we're going to design a report that sort of goes hand in hand along with the layout and the functionality and the UI that we create for that Angular application. So we're going to create a report that sort of fits in that application. And then at the same time, I'll go over some resources and finish off with question and answer if there are any questions to be answered. So let's go ahead and get started. Before I get started with the actual content here, let me ask you guys a couple of polls. So the first one, I'm going to ask you if you own ActiveReports or ActiveReports Server right now. So let me go ahead and quickly poll you guys what, if any, of those products you have. Okay, so that's awesome. Everybody's voted, and let me go ahead and close this vote, close this poll, and let me share it with you guys, the results. So it seems like about 50% only have ActiveReports Developer. About a third of you guys are working with ActiveReports Server, and then a fraction or a little bit of you guys, a few of you guys have both. So for those who only have ActiveReports Developer, you will also get a little immersion into the ActiveReports Server portion. And those of you who have ActiveReports Server, hopefully you will have some experience or to jump off of as we go through some things with ActiveReports Server and ActiveReports in general, along with the UI and UX enhancements. Let me go ahead and hide this and ask you one other thing as far as your target platform. So if you would check off which of these platforms you are currently targeting and which of them are your next projects targeting. I'll give it a couple more seconds. There we go. Okay, so let me go ahead and share this poll real quick. So about 80% targeting web, and then the rest of 60% and 20% targeting Silverlight and WinForms. Cool, that's good. Let me go ahead and close this poll, and let's continue on with the presentation. So we'll go ahead and get started to talking about design. And specifically what is available in Angular to help us enhance our UI and our UX. Let me go ahead and minimize my GoToWebinar here. Okay, so what is available? In order to understand the difference between UI and UX, we need to define the two. So UI and UX, user interface and user experience, are terms that usually are, and quite often they're used interchangeably. Excuse me. But there's obviously a difference. UI is part of UX, but to say that UI is part of UX doesn't give a lot of clarity. It doesn't, so in order to clarify the difference, let's talk about the definition of UX and how UI relates to it. So UX or user experience has a number of technical wiki definitions. So for example, some people say that user experience design is to make something that is useful, usable, and valuable. So making something useful, usable, and valuable doesn't really, doesn't really do it for me. So because there are lots of products that are useful, there are lots of products that are, usable, and there are lots of products that are valuable. Even if you combine them together, it doesn't really give you a really good picture. And to explain that, let me go ahead and show you a picture. So this staircase, the carpet, really nice carpet, right? Looks cool, looks nice. Good UI. However, it does not give good UX, especially on a stair, right? On a staircase. Imagine somebody, flying down the staircase, and you can just imagine how they can tumble over and fall and get hurt. So that user experience is not really good. But what really does it for me, or the definition that I like and makes sense to me, is this one, that UX design is the process of designing products that are easy to use and enjoyable and delightful to interact with. So in essence, UX focuses on the perception of the user towards the product they're using. That's basically it. So let's take a look at a couple other examples of good versus bad UX. So now, if you look at these pictures, what will your perception be of these pictures? So now, if you're presented with this nice-looking door, how would you presume you would walk through it? You see the handles, you would presume you pull, right? But unfortunately, the sign says push, so you have to push. So again, doesn't give you that really good feeling that yes, I was right. You have to push to get through the door. In the next picture, you're asked to enter your credit card information, and you're asked for your CVV code from the back of your card. Now, CVV codes are a series of numbers, not letters, and the keyboard that's presented is that of letters. So they have to press that, bring up the number keypad to enter their CVV code. Again, it doesn't give that, really good user experience. And the same thing with the last picture here. You're asked for your email address, but the keyboard is missing that one essential and crucial button, the @ symbol, that every email address has. So again, leaves a bad taste in your mouth, because you have to do extra work to find what you need in order to accomplish the task you're being asked to accomplish. So continuing on along the same line, what I'm trying to get at is that good UX is something that's intuitive. It makes sense. There's a good flow in it. There's a good progression to it. And all the pieces, they fit together very well. And because of that, good UX is oftentimes very hard to notice. It goes unrecognized, and it's invisible. That's unless you know where to look, and unless you're actually looking for it. So while it may be invisible, while ease of use may be invisible, but the absence of good UX, meaning bad UX, is definitely noticed, right? And the hallmark of bad UX is that it's hard to navigate. Imagine the tax forms that we used to fill out back, decades ago on paper. Going through all the tax code, writing down your numbers, your salary, your income, and multiplying and subtracting and adding. Going through all of the directions. For hours on end, you'd be sitting there and filling out these tax forms. That's what bad UX is. Nowadays, companies like TurboTax, who have this software that they collect the same information from you. It takes the same amount of time, but the whole process has been simplified. The questions have been simplified. They do all of the work of calculating and everything. All you have to do is just enter them. Although you still have to do the work, you're spending the same amount of time. It's just less stressful, less cumbersome. And this is what makes a good UX. So let's talk about the elements that makes this good UX. From a design perspective, Jesse James Garrett, he listed 5 elements in order to create a great UX. So from this iceberg, you see at the very bottom, you have a strategy, and we'll start from the bottom. So from the bottom, you have strategy, and this is, the strategy, of course, for any business, any product. You define your, the need for it. What user need is it trying to fill? You define the business goals for it. Is this product going to be, for the purposes of making money? Is it an internal product that the objective is to save money or to gain efficiency? What is the objective? So once you've set the strategy, once you have the strategy, then you move on to the scope and you define, the functionalities, you define how much of it is to be included. All of these things will be included in the scope. So defining strategy, defining scope, and then you define the structure. And the structure, of course, is the information architecture, the content, how much of the content you want to prioritize, you want to display, how much of it you want to, how do you want it to organize, how do you want to prioritize it, go back to that, the tax forms, right? You don't want to overwhelm your users with a whole bunch of information all at once. You have to break it up and structure it in a proper way that, your users can digest and go through it in an easier way. So keep it simple and keep it minimal. That's the structure. Defining the structure. How you're going to break it apart and how you're going to organize it is part of the structure. And then once you have that in mind, you have that defined, you go ahead and draw up your wireframe, and that's part of the skeleton. This is where you start to work on your interface design. This is where the UI starts to come into the picture, and this is why UI is part of the UX. The 5 points that we're talking about obviously encapsulates UX, and UI is just a small portion of that. So you can have something that looks nice, but functionally it's not really that good, right? You can understand that now. Navigation and layout and all of these things is part of the skeleton. How people move through the skeleton, through your product or through the website, for example, how you segregate the different screens, the words, how do they flow from one part to another, dividing the screen into different areas, the layout of each individual screen, how much you can fit, and all of these is part of the skeleton. And then finally is the surface. The surface is what your users will see, right? That's the web page that they see. That's the styling, the fonts, the colors, the images, the videos, everything that you are going to display to your user. That's part of the style, right? So as you move through these different stages from strategy to scope, you're moving from something that is abstract, right, to something that is more concrete. That is the process of defining a really good user experience. And then at the same time, what you have is, user experience is something that is UI, rather, something that is focused on the look, making things look pleasing, using the right colors, etc. While UX is focused on making things intuitive, the ease of use, the ease of navigation, intuitive nature, flow and progression, and the satisfaction the user receives from using it. right? So just like this picture, gives us a really good overview of user experience, UI versus UX. Okay. Let's continue on. And by the way, I'm sort of going through this content because I want to make sure that we get to the actual demo part. Everyone wants to go through the demo, gets to the demo, right? So we want to make sure get to the demo. So if you have any questions on the content, please send your questions. I will attempt to answer them. So let's go ahead and continue. For design fundamentals, obviously, for a good UX, you don't want to ask your users to do a lot of work. You want to allow them to do as little work as possible. So if you can automate certain things, absolutely you should be automating them. So for example, if you're asking for address, don't make them fill out the city and state. Just by asking for zip code, you can auto-populate the city and state just by asking the zip code. These types of things you can automate as much. If you can automate as much as you can, it gives even better UX to your end users. So make sure the flow and progression and the navigation is intuitive, and then also know who you're creating for, because the products and the websites and everything that we create, we have everything in our mind. We know how we want to lay things out. We know how to get from one part to another. But we're not going to be the users. We're not creating the product for ourselves. We're creating it for someone else. So make sure that it is intuitive for that person, that the layout is intuitive, that they are able to get where they want to go. And then obviously, going back to the pictures about the door and the CVV code and the email address, keep in mind the context in which these products will be used, right? So if you're keep in mind that if you're asking for an email address, present the right keyboard, and same thing with number pad and everything like that. All right, so let's go ahead and continue to the UI fundamentals. UI design is, you don't have to be an artist to design something nice, something that looks nice, and we'll talk a little bit about this as we proceed through our webinar, and we'll see how someone like myself, who's absolutely not an artist at all, has no artistic bone in his body, we can make something look better. So just through the use of colors and contrasts and all of these things, topography, selecting the right fonts and everything like that, you can make a UI look better. Right? There are some websites, for example, Westia. Let me go ahead and show. So there are certain websites, for example, that use different types of content to essentially display their product, right? So for Westia, for example, as soon as you load their website, you see the video playing in the background explaining what this website is for, right? For people who make videos, right, and post videos. So that's basically, these types of things that you deliver your message in a very clear and concise way. It presents a very good UI and a good UX. So keeping things simple and minimal is the key. Are two key things. And the last point is keeping things flat. So flat design is something to consider. As an example, I will show you the Google logos. Throughout the various logos that they've had, you can see how they, how it has changed. So from something that looked to now it looks very weird to us, and then bubbly, and then even more bubbly, and then starting to get flatter and flatter, and then from the flat, you see that it became even more simplified, right? So that the curvature is gone, the detail in the letters are gone. Everything is just more simple. That's the design that you want to use. And something in another website that really helps out a lot in this is material design, Google's material design website, so material.io. Here you can find a lot of helpful things. So from color palettes to text and all of these things that are available for you to use and play with and learn from. All of this is available here. So some of the stuff that we're going to be going over in the demo will be part of this as well. So let's go ahead and get started with the demo. Let me show you the project that we'll be working on. So this is a project, a sample, a Angular sample that we have. So I've already started it. Let me go ahead and bring it up real quick. So it is running on my local machine, and this is what it looks like. So basically what it is, it's a reporting sample. It connects to my local instance of ActiveReports Server. And as it's connecting, it's bringing in some of the reports that are available on my local instance of ActiveReports Server. So if, it lists them here, and if I click on it, it will essentially go through and generate the report. This is a PDF version of the report, so it's generated it and then exported it to PDF, and it's showing it here. So this is a PDF document, and there's functionality for printing, there's functionality for server-side printing and client-side printing and all of these things. So this is the UI, this is the sample that I want to go ahead and enhance a little bit, right? Because I don't like the color scheme that's used here. One thing that I should mention that with Angular, you get 4 pre-built themes. This is one of the themes that is being used by that is being employed in this sample. So if I go to styles, that's SAS, so you see the indigo pink. That's the pre-built theme that is being applied to this whole project. But again, I don't like that particular design. I want to just sort of create my own design, create a custom theme, and sort of enhance this theme and apply it to the rest of the view as well. So that's what we're going to be doing. So let me go ahead and start off doing that. And what we're going to do first of all, create a custom theme file. Okay, and the custom theme file we're going to create. Let's go ahead and just let's do a file, and we'll say custom theme.scss. Okay, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna paste some code here, and I will explain what this code does. Let me get to the right part here. Okay. So basically what we're doing here in this code is, of course, importing the material theming, and then we're using referencing the mat core. Basically, what the mat core is, it's an import that's SAS mixin. It includes basically all of the common styles that will be used for multiple components, right? So that's basically what the mat core is. So it includes these common styles for Angular material, and we can include that here. So we only have to load it once in a single file, as opposed to loading it on into separate files, into separate components. So we're going to use that, and then inside this file, we're also defining the color scheme. Okay, so a theme would have a primary color, an accent color, and a warning color. So the primary color, of course, is like the backgrounds for in this sample. So this is the primary color, for example. The accent color, call to action buttons. These will be the accent colors, something that you want the user's focus to be on. That's the accent color. And then the warning, of course, is if there's an error or something like that, you want to display that message in the color that's warning. So we're defining these 3 colors, and then we're passing them into this matte light theme. This matte light theme, basically, it creates the theme object. It creates a theme object, and then once this theme object is created, we're passing it to the Angular material theme. This is another mixin. and this mixin basically it outputs all of this styles for the theme, so that it can be applied to the app in the application in general. So the theme styles for core in each of the component used in your app, you can basically apply. It can be applied using this packaged together, basically using this Angular material theme. So that's basically part of it. Now, when I save this, it's going to compile. It's not going to really do anything because we haven't really applied it to the application at all. We haven't applied it to any of the components. Now, in order to apply it, basically, we just need to go back into our styles.css, SCSS, and we're going to just reference this theme that we created. So just like that. So the custom theme we just created, we're referencing that custom theme in the styles file. So now if I save this at this point, you will see that the theme applies again. Oh, failed to load. Okay. Yes. Let's go back. Okay, I think I've put it in the wrong place here. Let's bring it out there. Move. There we go. There you go. So the theme changed. So you see the primary color and the accent colors have changed. The only thing that hasn't affected is basically this has not been defined. And the side nav rather has not been defined to be affected by the primary color. So what I want to do is I want to extend this color scheme to the side nav, and then I want to highlight this reports list in a different shade of blue to sort of give it a popping out function. So let's go ahead and do that. In order to do that, what we're going to do is basically go into the, let's go ahead and do it. Let's go to the preview, and we're going to open the HTML file. In the HTML file, we're going to modify, not the HTML file, sorry, the SAS file. We're going to modify certain things here. So first thing I'm going to do is give a white background to the side nav. So we're just going to want to make sure that it's a white, complete white background. And then what we're going to do is give these background colors to each of the parts of the side nav. So we're going to give a shade of blue to this side nav right here. And then we're going to give another shade of blue to the list and to the portion underneath it where all of the exports are, the printing function and everything like that is mentioned. So that, and I think down here, yes, the operations. Okay. So that's basically it. Oh, and one more thing I'm going to do is when we select one of the reports, I want to change the selected report, highlight that in a different color. So let's go ahead and do that. So this basically gives a different color to the highlighted report. Let's go ahead and save this, and let's bring up the file again. So you see, everything has been modified. You have a different shade of blue here. So if I select the customers list report again, you see it's highlighted in orange, and the report is generated as it was before. So that's the first part of the first part of the demo that I wanted to show. So this is, enhancing the UI, right? So giving a really nice color scheme to our application. The other thing that I wanted to do is, some reports can be bigger. they can be larger. So this side nav, I want to essentially just hide it. I want to give that functionality, put a button right here, for example, to say that, click it, toggle the button, toggle the side nav, hidden and open. So that's the other thing that I want to go ahead and start implementing. So let's go back to our application, and here what we're going to do is go into our preview component.html file. So the side nav that we have here, let's see, right here. What we're going to do is put this function here, okay? And then in the above over here is where I'm going to put in the toolbar, put a button where it's going to reference this drawer, basically. It's going to reference this drawer, and then when you click it, it hides it, and when you click the button again, it displays the side nav. So let's go ahead and get that done. So let me go ahead and copy something here. Copy the code for the button at least. Make it simple on me. Okay, so let's go to right here. Okay, let's put that there. Whoops. There we go. Okay, that's better. And then also we need to close that. I'm going to move this over here. Yeah, that should be good. Okay, let's save this and see what happens. Come on. It's not loading. Okay. Let's see. Let's see what is happening here. Okay, let's just do this. All right, let's try loading it again. There we go. Okay. So you have the button here that if we click it, it automatically hides and toggles the view here, the nav bar view. So that's one way. Another way that we're enhancing the UX here, giving more visual room to the application and to the user. The other thing that I want to do is I also want to allow the user to not only view the report, but I also want them to be able to create reports. The way I'm going to do that is basically I will use the same space, this preview pane here. I will use the same space and put a tab bar, a tab group. So one tab is going to be this designer, and another tab is going to be rather this viewer, and the other tab is going to be the designer. So let's go ahead and let's do that. Let's go ahead and bring up the report here, this project here, and I am going to use the PowerShell, rather the terminal, to create another component, and we're going to call it designer. So we'll just say G for generate, C for component, and we'll say designer, name it designer. And that should create a component here for us and put it right here in the app. So here we go. So the designer component is created. Now, if we look at the HTML, all it is basically shows that the designer is created and it works. Doesn't really give a lot of functionality, but we're gonna fix that. And what we're going to do, remember, is we're going to connect to our ActiveReport server instance, and we're going to bring in the designer from the ActiveReports and embed it into this project. And in order to do that, we're going to use an iframe. Whoops. Okay, let's go. Let me go ahead and paste some code here. Copy code first. There we go. Okay. Excuse me. Let me just fix the formatting a little bit. Okay. All right. So just basically just a basic iframe. It's referencing a get embed URL method. We're going to go ahead and generate that method as well. So let's go ahead and get that done in the designer component.ts. Excuse me. Before I can implement that method, or before I can create that method, what I need to do is import a DOM sanitizer. This is something that's going to help us. It's going to help us basically create this instance of passing a URL through code, basically. So let's go ahead and pass this DOM sanitizer in the constructor as well. Okay, and then we can call, at this point, we can call the get embed URL right after this ng init method. So again, local instance of my ActiveReport server, and we're referencing the designer. So that's basically it. It's returning that URL. And that should basically be it. So this creates the designer. It's not going to show in the application. It's not going to show if I save it. It's not going to show anywhere, just because we're not referencing it anywhere. We're not displaying it anywhere. To do that, I said we were going to create some tab groups. Let's go ahead and go back to the preview HTML. And I'm going to copy the code to create tabs. Okay, so I'm going to copy this code and scroll down to here. This is where the preview is being shown, the preview content. So let's go ahead and just paste this here. And I'm going to indent this a little more, just align everything a little bit better. I don't want to display this message anymore, that the message that says you haven't selected any reports. I don't want to display that anymore. That the spinner I still want to display. Everything else I still want to display. So that's one part, and then the other part, that's one tab rather. The other tab that we're going to display here is going to be. Okay, the other one is going to be basically displaying the designer, and it's referencing that designer component that we created here. So this app designer is referencing this designer component. So we can go ahead and align this a little better. Okay, that's it. So now if I save everything, we should have a tab group right here. And there's something wrong. Okay, let's see. Let me just go ahead and do, that's the problem is, I believe. Okay. The problem is that I have the formatting wrong. So let me just do this, make it easier. Like that. Okay. So now if I save this, this should load and we should have tabs. Yep. Okay. So now we have a tab. So now if I again load the customer report, it will generate the report. if I click on the designer, it will display my designer. I was working on it earlier, so the designer is prompting me, do you want to display whatever you were working on earlier? And I'm going to say no. So that's basically it. Now, if you wanted to, you can go back and forth, blah, blah, blah. But that's enhancing the designer a little bit, right? Enhancing everything, basically. So we can toggle the side nav. We can switch back and forth, and these types of things. Now, let's go ahead and continue with our presentation and talk about some reporting fundamentals. So just like you see with Angular, you have every component divided, and you have everything segmented into components, segregated into components, so that you can easily use one part and another part, reference one part and another part, just like we did with the designer in the preview, and vice versa. And you can use the same designer reference in, for example, the PDF viewer or the login portion, or you may have another component. So you can do the same thing. This is essentially the power of Angular, right? That everything is segmented and separated into these small chunks that you can reuse. And that's the idea that we want to continue with our reporting function as well. So we want to be able to break our reports into smaller reusable parts. And there's a couple ways to do that. Two ways that you can do that is to use master reports and subreports. Basically, everybody knows subreports, but master reports basically, if you imagine an invoice. On an invoice paper, you would generally have, the company's logo. You will have the company's address. You will have, the company footer, and then you will have the middle content, the content in the middle where the customer bought X number of A, X number of B, and then the price for each, and the total and the subtotal and all of these things. So the individualized or itemized list of purchase items. So master report in this instance would be what is the top portion, where you have the company logo, the company name, the company address, and the bottom portion where you have the report footer. In this instance, that's what the master report would be. And then in the middle, you would have the itemized list of purchases and aggregations and totals and taxes and all of that. So breaking report down in that sort of a way. Another way that you can enhance the use of reports is to use themes and styles. Now, themes and styles, basically, some companies, some of our customers, they have a corporate requirement that they need to maintain a certain format. They need to maintain a certain theme, a corporate theme, or a corporate set of approved fonts and font sizes and logos and these types of things. So themes and styles help in these instances. That just gives you a consistent look and feel across the report, across many reports, all of your reports basically. All you do is just define the theme and apply the theme. Again, this helps to ensure that it's the same look and feel, that the familiar understanding of a report and the corporate ownership of that report. And then at the same time, you want to use layers. More of a niche use case. And layers are good when you need to make small changes to your reports. And by that I mean, say you have a customer that wants to, doesn't like to have a chart at the end, at the very top of a report. They want to have the chart at the bottom page of every page. If you need to make small changes, these types of changes, layers are good for that. So you don't have to create a separate report and maintain a separate report file just for that customer. You can use a layer which is part of the same report file, is just specified to this particular customer. That's the idea. And then, of course, you want to make your reports intuitive, easily navigable. So, for example, we're going to be building a dashboard report. In that dashboard report, you would expect that the user would click on something and that they would be displayed, they will be given more valuable information. They drill down into the report. So we want to make things easily navigable, intuitive, and easily accessible. for your end users. So let's go ahead and work on a dashboard. So for the sake of time, let me go ahead and bring up the report here. Let me do this. Reload. Okay. Yeah, let's go ahead, go to the designer. And the designer. So I already have a file that I created. So let's, I was working on this for in this morning's session as well. So here I have a file that I created, a dashboard that I created. So if I preview this report, you see that it gives you an overview of a sales team. Okay, the sales team, obviously it gives you their sales figures, so year to date how they're doing, as opposed to versus the quota that they've been assigned. It gives you their accomplishments last year, what they did last year, how they did last year, in the form of bullet graphs. It also gives you their completion rate, and this could be like, for example, everybody's required to take a a certain course, certain training. So this would be their completion rate. And then I want everyone, basically, I want to create a report where if I click on the name, it goes into the details for the sales figures for Michael Blythe or Garrett Vargas or Shu Ito. So I want to create a single report that basically will load the individualized sales figures for each of these individuals. That's what we're going to do. So let's go ahead and see how this is created. So let's go ahead and go back to the designer. We're going to create a new report. And in this new report, let's go ahead and create it first. So with this new report, let me scroll down and actually get some get to the data that we're going to be using. So we're running short on time. I'm going to go quickly and add some data here. So I'm going to add a couple of data sets, actually 3 data sets to this report. We're going to add an AdventureWorks data set. Come on. And we're going to name this, let's say, annual total by year. And for the sake of this, we're going to go ahead and just paste a query. I'm going to validate it. I'm going to hit OK and add another data set. And from the same AdventureWorks, we're going to name this data set employee info. And the query that we're going to use, we'll just paste it in here, validate. Okay. And one last data set, and this is going to be from the employee database, and this is basically going to just call this employees, and we'll say select star from employee. Validate. Okay. So that's basically it. Now what I want to do is bring in, I want to show their picture, I want to show their name, title, when they were hired, their contact information, a chart of their earnings and their sales rather, and then the table for annual sales. That's what I'm going to do. In order to do that, I'm going to use a shape control to show their picture. And I'm going to change the height, the size of this to 2 by 2. I'm going to go into the background property for the image, and it's going to come from an external data source. And the value of it is going to be, it's going to be from my employees. And right there, full image. So that's going to be the larger image of this person, of every person. And then what I'm going to do is bring in these text boxes. So let's go ahead and bring in a text box. Let's put it here. Actually, let's move it a little bit farther like that. Okay, and let's go ahead and just use, okay, we're going to make this, the width of this is going to be 2, and it's going to be 0.5. and we're going to make this 18 font, bold, and we'll leave it as black. And if we use these three dots, we can select the field that we want to display in this text box, and we'll just go for a name here. And then I'm going to bring in a couple of other text boxes, so at the same level. So let's go ahead and bring this text box, and I'm going to format this first and then copy and paste, because it's going to be basically the same. I'm just going to copy and paste that same text box to keep things simple. So 2 by 0.3, and it's going to be size 11, and it's going to be a color of gray. So let's pick that gray. Okay. That should be it for that. So let's go ahead and copy, paste it, and paste it again. So we'll just align them one after the other. And so here we're going to display from the employees menu their title. Oh, that doesn't look very dark, so we'll have to change that and make it a little darker. The next one, I'm just going to paste the value here. Okay, and same thing with this one. So let's go ahead. Okay. Let's go ahead and change the color. Let's make it a little darker. So let's use that. That makes it darker. Okay. And then I'm just going to use the same formatting and copy and paste these text boxes. We're going to change the color to royal blue. We're going to make it bold, and that should be it. So this one we're going to change to just say email. This would be a static text. Here we're going to select from the employee info their email address, and this one from the employee info we're just going to show, say, like a phone number. Okay, so that's basically that. Let's put a divider. Okay, there we go. And we want to put a chart, we said. Let's put a chart. Let's expand it. Let's go to our data fields. And from our employee info, we're going to select order month on the x-axis. And we're going to select subtotals and the data fields. Go back to properties, and I want to display this. Let's change the, let's display this as a, not bar, line. Let's plain line. And let's change the palette to something that fits more with the layout that we're using, the color scheme that we're using in the app. We'll use pastel. We'll change the background color in shortly. Let's go ahead and bring in, okay, let's remove the title. I don't want to know the title. We can remove the legend. We're going to know what this is about. For the plot area, the background color, we can go ahead and select white, like that. The x-axis, let's see, the x-axis, we want to do the angle the labels here. The title we don't need. The y-axis we're going to format to be currency, and again, y title we don't need. Okay, that takes care of that. One last thing that I said I wanted to add was a table. And this table is basically going to show the annual figures. So the table is going to be bound to the annual totals by year. And on the in the first column, we're going to have order year. And the second column, we're going to have order count. And in the third column, we're going to have the annual total. Okay, so now if we run this, it's going to basically display the report, but it's not going to be a drill through that we want. So it displays all of the data that we need. Okay, but what I really want to do is to pass a parameter into this report from the parent report, from that dashboard report. Okay, so what we're going to do is create a parameter here. And I'm going to try to do this very quickly because we're running out of time. So we'll say employee ID, and we're going to choose a integer type. Let's go back to the data. Now we need to modify each of these data sets so that it accounts for this employee ID. Okay, so let's create that employee ID. And we're going to pick expression, parameters, employee ID. And then just above grouping, we want to say where salesperson ID equals employee ID. Let's go ahead and validate and click OK. And do the same thing with the other with these other data sets. So let's create the parameter, employee ID. And for the value, we're going to use expressions again. Okay, and then for that, we're going to say, let's see, sales order header dot salesperson ID. Okay, and that's going to go at the very bottom. Let's validate, make sure it's right, and okay. And lastly, for the employees, again, parameter, employee ID, and expression, parameters, employee ID. And for this one, where is this coming from? Oh, this one is ID. Okay, so this is going to be where ID equals that. Okay, validate, okay. All right, so now we have this report created. Let's save this report. Let's say child, let's say dashboard child. Okay, save it. Let's go to open that same dashboard report that we were working on earlier. Where did it go? Here. Okay, so now what we want to do is when I click on the name, I want to pass the employee ID of this person to that child report. Okay, and the way we do that is go to the properties with this text box selected, jump to report, and we're going to pick dashboard child, the report that we just created, and we're passing a parameter of employee ID. Okay, and the value of this employee ID is the ID field. So now if we go ahead and run this, and let's say we click on Michael Blythe, it should display Michael Blythe's details, right? So that his sales figures will be displayed. Let's go back. Let's click on Show Eto, and his information is displayed. And let's try one more. Okay, and her sales information is displayed. One thing I forgot to do is align these to the left. That would give a better UX. Okay, so because of time, I'm going to go ahead and leave that off, but we'll wrap up this webinar by showing you some of the resources that I showed you earlier in this webinar, mainly the Google's material design website. There's also the Angular documentations, really good documentations on Angular. You can take a look at if you're new with Angular, and then of course with ActiveReports and ActiveReport Server, you can take a look at on our website, and you will see that you're able to download free trials of both ActiveReports Developer and ActiveReports Server. You've basically seen a demo of both of them here, but if somebody in your company needs another demo, you can request a demo here. But as I mentioned, you're always able to download a free 30-day full-fledged trial of ActiveReports and ActiveReports Server. So with that, I will end, and I'm going to take a look to see if there are any questions. And if you have questions, please send them through. I don't see questions. Okay. It doesn't look like there are any questions. If you have any questions, please type them in. I will hang out for just another few seconds. If you don't have any questions, then I appreciate you joining us. You will get an email from us with all of everything that we went through today, the recording of this presentation, and the PowerPoint deck. You will get that in an email. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us, and reply back to us. Let us know how we did, and you will also receive an email with a link to a survey. The survey only has 5 questions, and the majority of those questions are rating like 1 through 5, something like that. So it's very, very easy to fill out. Won't take you a long time at all. So please do fill that out. We really appreciate, the feedback that we get with regards to the content that we provide you, the demos that we provide you, my ability to present. Feel free to be candid. I won't take it personally, mostly. We do appreciate your feedback all the time. So please do fill out the survey that comes your way. Again, thank you for the time, joining me on this demo, on this presentation. And I hope to catch you around on the next webinar that we do.